Hello, everyone. I'm Jamie Henkel. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm the Learning and Inclusion Manager at PFLAG National, joining you from Portland, Oregon, which is not on fire, I promise, for something to talk about live. I'm really excited to bring in Jean Marie Nevada, who's going to lead our discussion today.
Hey, Jamie, how are you? Doing okay? Oh, she's good. She's good. She just wanted to make sure that we all knew that Portland is okay in spite of what is going on. So welcome everybody to Something to Talk About. My name is Jean Marie Nevada. My pronouns are she or ella. And we are talking about, well, we're finally going to talk about it. We're going to talk about COVID today because there was some really interesting research that recently came out. And Jamie has just put that link up on the screen for everybody. The article title was LGBTQ plus populations experience newfound anxiety and depression in the COVID-19 pandemic. It was written by Scott Mayer and it appeared on the UCSF website. And so the article had some really interesting findings about how the community is dealing with this, specifically when it comes to coping with anxiety and depression and what people can do about it. So one of the findings, just the lead in this, mentioned that the LGBTQ communities have experienced increased anxiety and depression since the onset of COVID-19, especially for those who hadn't dealt with any kind of health conditions before. So to talk about what's going on, and most importantly, how we can all do a better job supporting each other during this time, I want to introduce my special guests for today. So with me today, I have got PFLAG National's Board President, Kathy Godwin, and I also have our Director of Chapter Engagement, Jamie Curtis. Hello, both of you. How are you?
Great, thank you.
Good. Well, I brought you on to talk about a less than perky happy topic. But we're going to somehow see our way through to something good on the other side of this, which is to talk about what we have been seeing since COVID started and how this is affecting people when it comes to actually getting support. So let's jump into the first question and get the conversation going. And as a reminder, for any of you who are participating online with us, please send in your comments and questions. We love hearing from you, and we will be doing questions at the end. So the first question that we actually floated out to people to talk about today was, besides COVID itself, which is obviously incredibly stressful and dangerous, what other factors do you think might be contributing to the depression and anxiety being seen in the LGBTQ populations now? And how has this looked for both of you? Because you both spend so much time looking at our field and working with our chapters. So what have you seen?
Go ahead. I'll go. I live in California and have been attending some of the virtual meetings, and just the things that we're seeing and hearing is the fact that people feel shut in. They feel lonely. They feel that some of them have lost jobs and therefore don't know on the end of this, where will they be able to go? Some of them have moved home from school and now don't know when they'll get to go back. Mm-hmm. Some of them may or may not have been out when they left for school, or some had been out but found a whole new set of freedom. So there's a whole different level of depression that I've witnessed in these meetings from parents sharing, but also sometimes the family member also. And even some of the community who has been essential workers and are concerned about their own health and if they are putting others at risk that they're around. So it is very multifaceted, and it seems to have driven up a high percentage of those feelings.
Interesting. Jamie, what have you seen?
Yeah, I think the same. And I think to add on to Kathy, a lot of people are home now, some with their family of origin and not their chosen family. And that can be really hard for people who have developed strong chosen families and have to be away from them right now. So that is creating different dynamics at home. People have concerns about employment and healthcare, as the article talked about. There are already disparities in healthcare, and let's throw a big pandemic into it to just make things even more complicated. And the other thing I've seen a lot of, and Jean Marie and I talked about this early on, was just grief. People are mourning the plans that they had, in addition to losing loved ones, but they're mourning that I've seen chapters that were planning to go to their first Pride this year and had events planned that were new and were big things for chapters. And they had really looked forward to. And so, just the pain of, having all these plans and all these things we wanted to do to improve our communities and having to sort of throw them up in the air, I think is hard for people on an individual level and a group level.
Actually, I want to talk about that a little bit more, because I think that there are, there's the fear that people have of frankly getting sick, or somebody who they love getting sick. There's the fears that we all have about what's going to happen next to the economy, to our jobs, to our families. But I think there's also sort of, this experience of grief, which sort of gets us, I think, into that second question a little bit, which is getting to the conversation about what's really unique in the LGBTQ space that we're dealing with here. And I think that, Jamie, when you mentioned the cancellation of Pride, we all sort of saw that as, oh, that's going to be really unfortunate. But could you both talk a little bit about, because you've both spent probably more time at Pride parades than most people and Pride celebrations because of your roles at PFLAG, could you talk about what that level of community means to people who are LGBTQ? Especially because PFLAG is often doing their work in very rural areas, in very conservative areas, in sometimes really remote areas where Pride and PFLAG are sometimes the only game in town for people. So what do you think the loss of having Pride is going to be like for people? What was it like? And what do you think we should be looking at now because of that?
I can start. Pride means so much to so many people, and I think it's sometimes hard to understand that if you haven't really experienced small town and rural prides. I live in downtown Washington, D.C. Anytime I walk out my door, I see LGBTQ people holding hands and showing affection for each other. And they are out and proud. And for a lot of people, when they go to Pride, that's the only space, sometimes all year, that they can see a fellow LGBTQ people walking together and celebrating together. And so for people in those settings, it's such an important check-in moment and point where they can all be together. And so not having that, can be a big challenge for people. And it is a time we do talk about the celebration of it, but it's also a time to energize and think about all that is ahead and all the other work that needs to be done. And all of us have different touch points in the year, whether it's New Year or our birthdays, where we think about it as a reset. And in some ways, the calendar revolves around Pride. It's another time where people sort of plan up to that and then after it. And so having, missing that touch point in the year is big.
I feel like that could be like hashtag PFLAG life, like life, everything goes to June and then we just start again, looking forward to June all over again. Kathy, what about you? Because you've certainly spent a lot of time at Pride and looking at it from the parent perspective. What do you think the loss of it's going to mean sort of in light of this COVID piece? And what are you hearing from people?
Well, I will second all that Jamie said, but I do think as a parent, it's also your opportunity to be seen by these LGBTQ kids and adults, and to say, we love you, we're safe. We're known for PFLAG hugs at Pride parades, but we're also known for the after effect. So Utah, I've marched in Utah, I've marched in Phoenix, I've marched in California. Each has similarities, but the difference is the after effect, where someone may reach out to a PFLAG chapter because they've seen, oh, there's other parents that might be able to talk to my parent. And so that's missing. And it's hard to capture those people. California, you often saw, I have seen families, whole families at a Pride parade. And you have no idea if anyone in that family identifies as LGBTQ, but it's just that sort of welcoming. Not so much in Utah, not necessarily in Arizona. So I really think that's a big factor that we don't always think about. And that reset that you mentioned, Jean Marie, is exactly right. It gives the chapters another energy to know that there are people out there that they can reach out to and are safe in their community. So,
and I think that is probably, being with PFLAG, it's one of the things that makes you most proud that, we joke about Pride, June is our month, but the truth is that the 11 other months, we're doing all the work that leads up to and comes after when those phone calls come through, and they do in fact come through. I mean, I think there are probably an epic number of LGBTQ people who say, I picked up my first PFLAG thing at Pride for my parents, and then the ball got rolling. I mean, we all have some sort of story like that. I'm sort of peeking in. I try to peek into the comments while we're talking, but it's hard. I just saw somebody write, this was going to be my kid's first Pride celebration. And I have to tell you, that just broke my heart, because that is, it is a rite of passage for many of us in the community to be able to, I mean, most of us can tell you all about what the first time of Pride was like. And I think that's really important. So I want to talk about what we do. So the researchers who did this study said, listen, we've seen different levels of depression and anxiety in the community. And one of the pieces of advice for clinicians, because this was very much written for clinicians, would be that you need to keep checking in with patients. So Jamie and Kathy, would you like to talk a little bit about first, how we're doing that at PFLAG, because there's a lot of online things going on. Maybe Kathy, you want to start, and Jamie, you can talk about that too, because we know what's happening. But also, I then want to start talking about sort of what we can do as individuals. And then we will definitely be going to comments and questions. So everybody, please keep making those comments. So what have we been doing, and what have we seen at PFLAG to get people connected and to fill that gap?
Well, what I'm seeing in these virtual meetings is that I'm seeing many more couples come opposed to individuals. Often in an in-person meeting, you will see a mom or a dad or a brother or a sister or an employee or a friend. Many more couples coming together. You see them discussing how to help their LGBT loved one, many of which may have been setting up to have surgeries, and we're going through some mental health conversations. And now all of a sudden, those have been cut off. And so the parents are trying to help their kids who may not have access to that kind of healthcare support, and it feels different to them. The person that they're working with is now on a screen, and maybe they met them before, maybe they didn't meet them before. So those relationships are difficult when you already feel self-conscious about who you are and how you feel about yourself.
How interesting to see couples. That's very interesting. And that's, having been to a lot of in-person meetings, it's usually mom or dad, but not mom and dad. How fascinating. Jamie, talk about what you've seen, because you're managing the chapter network. So tell us what you see.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely see a lot of people joining the PFLAG Connects meetings because they just want to connect. It's, people are stuck at home. I am stuck here home alone. So, these opportunities to connect with people means so much, I know, to me. I feel like I'm getting emotional, but to be able to see people and have that face-to-face and have that time where otherwise I'm just alone, really is important. And it's an important thing that, PFLAG chapters are doing. And it's interesting, people who, I've seen a lot of people in PFLAG meetings who, aren't looking for sort of intense support, but they're dealing with the situation they're in right now. As Kathy said, they have a changed circumstance. They have their kids home more now, and they're dealing with that. They are dealing with long simmering family issues that maybe, haven't been addressed. So, being able to join a meeting is important. And we also see people who either because the timing of when meetings didn't work for them, or they had a busy schedule, or they weren't able to attend meetings for whatever reason, can now attend. And I know for me, it's like some days it's like, okay, finish up my dinner. 5 minutes later, I'm, talking to people. It's really easy to be right there to connect with people. And so people have been able to do that more so than they have before. And I really do see people reaching out and just needing that one-on-one. They need to see other faces. They need to hear other people.
It's funny, on Sunday, I went to my local chapter meeting via PFLAG Connects, which is here in Palm Springs. And then the other night, I went to the Northwest Arkansas chapter meeting where they were doing a social event. They actually did an online craft night and sent my craft kit to me here in California. We all got together and did that. And it wasn't about support. It was just about seeing each other's faces. And frankly, not talking about COVID, talking about gluing things together and what happened at work. And it was really fascinating to see even people who had never visited PFLAG before were showing up just to check in and to see who was there. And it really made me aware of how important that is. And for anyone who's a little bit newer to PFLAG, what PFLAG Connects is a system we launched just after the world turned upside down, which got our chapter network online, because for the first time in almost 50 years, we actually had to shut down in-person meetings, and we knew that that is such an integral lifeline. So I want to ask you both on an individual level. What are you doing to check in with people? What has felt important to you? Has anything really felt good? I know we've seen so many articles about things like Zoom fatigue and that we're exhausted by being on the phone now. So really quickly, what are you doing to check in with people on a more personal level? What has it looked like for you?
Well, I know that I'm doing a combination. I'm doing text messages sometimes. I'm doing email other times, and then I'm usually asking, let's get on the phone. Let's chat. Sometimes I just call out of the blue and just say, just took a chance. Do you have 15 minutes? And I think that's helped me. And it also makes me feel connected to people.
Yeah, I think the random check-ins. Jamie, what about you?
Yeah, I agree. I think the random check-in is important. I think especially if you know someone's struggling or going through a hard time, to check in with them. I think to your point, scheduling fun things to do as well. Even I love the ideas of chapters doing things that are different than support as well. Just opportunities to be together. And I think that one of the things, sort of bigger picture, is, as we talk about mental health, is hopefully this helps to sort of normalize some of the conversations that we're having around mental health. And, the LGBTQ community is obviously dealing with this and having their own struggles, but as are a lot of people. And hopefully this begins a time when we open up those conversations. And it's okay for people to also share their own experiences and their own struggles, and to admit that to people and admit when they're struggling, and support each other across those lines.
Thank you. So let's see if we can bring Jamie back in. And because I've seen the comments have been going by really, really quickly. So Jamie, what questions have we had, or maybe what comments have we had that you'd like to share with us? Because it looks like people are chatty as usual.
Yeah, there was one question that came up from one of our chapter members in Los Angeles, who was wondering if you could talk a little bit, and Jean Marie, I think this might be a question where you're going to shine, about what we learned and what sort of tactics can we apply today when it comes to COVID-19 from living through the HIV and AIDS epidemic in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and the community coming together to provide support for coworkers and neighbors. Like, what can we learn from that experience?
I just need to say this. You need to do it yourself. What we learned during the HIV crisis was that if we did not save ourselves, nobody was coming to save us. And that we had to bind together as a community to develop care, to develop plans for care, to develop networks of people to care, to educate other people, to bring attention to the fact that we were literally dying in the streets, as is happening now. I think my biggest lesson from that was you have to do it yourself. And furthermore, when you do it, it's going to be something that is strong and people are going to look at. I mean, people are looking at how we dealt with that. But make no mistake, this is very different. When 100,000 people died from AIDS, it appeared on page 17 of the New York Times under the fold. It didn't even get 2 columns. When 100,000 people died from COVID, everyone's name was printed on the front page of the New York Times. So make no mistake, there's a big difference here, but there are certain things we can learn. I'll put away my soapbox now and let our guests speak.
Well, and I would add to that, I think that during the AIDS crisis, the LGBTQ community came together, and people really, they depended on each other as well. And I think that is hopefully something that we can maybe learn from, that is coming together, helping each other who are struggling with anxiety and depression, reaching out, reminding each other to take breaks, encouraging people to take care of themselves, and really taking care of each other.
Yeah. Kathy, you want to add anything on that one?
I just want to say that I agree with all of that. And I do think that it's important for us to remember that there are people today who are living with HIV and AIDS, and they are isolated and feeling like they don't know who to reach out. And frankly, I've heard conversations where for the first time, they're telling someone on our PFLAG Connect's virtual platform. And the first response that happens with PFLAG, which is awesome, is one of the members said, "We're your family now." And that's sort of this feeling of, even in this virtual platform, that person felt comforted.
That's fun. That's exactly why PFLAG needs to be. Jamie, do we have any other questions out there? I think a few more have been popping through.
Yeah. One of our teammates shared that they have, in their personal experience, that the crazy part about COVID is the fact that they've reconnected with family and friends that they hadn't seen or spoken to regularly in a long time. That their family and friends do a weekly Zoom call. And I just wanted to check in with you all. Have you had similar experiences? Because I know it's something that has come up for me. I've shared with lots of folks. I had a 3-hour phone date with somebody I've known for a very long time, but we'd sort of lost touch. And it was definitely because we're both stuck at home and we're both stressed and we're both frustrated. And it was like, I want to check in with that person. So have you had similar experiences?
Definitely. I mean, I have a friend that I went to high school with who posted something. We reconnected on text and texted for about 2 weeks solid just to make sure everything was okay. And it felt great. It's definitely happening on my part. Kathy and Jamie?
Absolutely. Definitely reaching out to people that I had not seen in quite some time, that I might have gone to high school or college with, and all different platforms, whatever way they would respond. That's how it's worked for me.
That is fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. And really specifically, I have a group of friends. There are 5 of us that met our freshman year of college. And we're sort of all spread out now. One of my friends lives in London, and we usually see each other like once a year. And we have been doing weekly Zoom calls for the past 3 months. Every Saturday, it's either like 3 or 4 p.m. Saturday. So my friend in London can do it. And it's after her kids are in bed. And we just do, sometimes 30 minutes, sometimes we stay on for an hour and a half, and it's just a check-in. And, sometimes we all get so busy that these relationships are hard to keep up. And I feel like that is one thing that this has given us time to make those connections.
I would be remiss if I didn't point out Jamel, who actually made that comment, hosts our weekly staff fun hour, which happens on Wednesdays at PFLAG, because we all recognize that we're doing this. There, remote fun. Maggie was saying, oh, good, Maggie commented on it. We have on Wednesdays our remote fun, recognizing that even for people doing this work, it's really difficult. And Jamel is the game master, comes up with something new for us every single week. It's never boring. And I have to say, the first time we did, I was like, oh, another meeting. And now when I can't go, my heart is broken. So yay for Jamel, because he really set the bar high for all of us in our personal lives. Jamie, any other comments or questions we want to get in? Because we have about, I think, 7 minutes left. Yeah.
So another question that came in, this is a little bit more of an intense question, but I think it's an important conversation to have. Somebody was wondering if you think that the pandemic might be connected to the increase in violence that we're seeing towards people who are trans and non-binary and gender non-conforming right now.
Do either of my guests want to take a stab at this one?
Well, I can just say what I have not personally heard of individuals in meetings I've been at, but I have been reading that there is an increase of violence, and it's it's often behind closed doors. Because people aren't out. So it's even more dangerous because now there is no place to go. And so that's what I've been reading. So I agree. It is definitely happening.
Yeah. And I think what we know is just from general patterns is that when discrimination tends to happen and is not being addressed, as it often isn't, or violence isn't being addressed, it tends to creep into all areas. It's not just targeted at one group. When you see hate crimes numbers go up, they go up for every group. It's not like some drop and some increase. It tends to be pretty proportional. So I suspect that'll be it. Jamie, and do we have any more questions that we can talk about? I'm seeing so many good comments here.
Yeah, I'm seeing lots of comments that I wanna pull up about some of the things that that chapters are doing really quickly. Marcia shared that they're having a breakout group that's about art and healing. I'm guessing that is one of the workshops we featured at our last convention. And they're also having groups for support and sort of specific language needs. Toby mentioned that that there's a group of local musicians that does a concert every week, and that's another way that they're supporting and helping to connect in Colorado. So I wanted to pull up those comments really quick, because those are sort of, I love hearing about those things, and I'm so excited. But one last question is, somebody was wondering, you know, if you have any ideas for how we might connect with LGBTQ people who are experiencing homelessness, that are either sort of been forced out of their homes or have lost their homes because of not being able to work.
I can tell you here in Palm Springs, our local community center hosts a food bank. And that tends to attract people, and it tends to be a place for community to talk. And I know that they've increased some of their services because of recognizing that a lot of people are out of work. So I think one of your primary spots that you might want to check out is if you have a local LGBTQ community center, because they often are a hub also for finding jobs too. And Jamie and Kathy, I don't know if you have any other feedback on that.
I agree. Here in Oakland, it's a hub for youth to get food. So for sure they're going there. The other one would be, there is also a local community counseling center, which youth can gravitate to find out what other resources they're available for. And those are located and open even during this time.
Yeah, and Jamie just put out Centerlink's URL, which will help you find your community center. Jamie, do you have any other stuff?
Yeah, I would just say, in addition to community centers, I know here in DC, I follow a couple different groups that serve LGBTQ youth. And they have been sharing information, so and resources and what needs to be done to help homeless people right now. So look for those resources that are out there, because someone is probably organizing and helping folks, and it's a great way to get involved.
And one last thing, most PFLAG chapters know the local groups in your area. Yes. So if you reach out to them directly, they may be quickly able to understand what you're looking for and most specifically direct you. Absolutely. Or hear of someone. Do it.
Yeah.
We were all on the same wavelength. You probably saw me with my arms up. I was getting the PFLAG kind of chapter link as well. Because that's something I recommend to folks a lot, that, you know, I'm in Portland. I can tell you about some of the things that are going on in Portland, but your local PFLAG chapter is going to be the one that's able to connect you with the groups that Jamie Curtis was just mentioning, or the community center that Jean Marie was talking about, because they have those on the ground connections. And I am not seeing any other questions or comments. So Jean Marie, I think I'm going to turn it back over to you and let you close us out.
Well, Jamie and Kathy, thank you so much for being with me, and Jamie Henkel, as usual. Thank you so much for hosting this session. I want to thank everybody who's participating with us once again. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for joining us for half an hour every week. This really has become the highlight of my week because I get to chat with everybody. I want to make sure everybody puts next week on your calendar because we are going to have a really fun show. I have Billy Bean from Major League Baseball and Kurt Walker from UCLA softball coming on, and we're going to talk about LGBTQ in sports, and I am so excited. I can't even stand it. So we're going to have a great conversation next week. Be here, same bad time, same bad channel. Every single week we close out the exact same thing, which is our advice from Dr. Who, which is to run fast, laugh hard, and to be kind. And of course, please wear your mask, because you should be wearing your mask because science matters. My name is Jean Marie Nevada. I'm really happy to be with you. Please come learn more about us at pflag.org, and we will be back next week for something to talk about live. Thanks, everybody. Bye.